Hi everyone, Woody here with the first Fat Tail Daily podcast of 2025. I'm joined by James Cooper to explore a fascinating political angle that could reshape the commodity markets in 2025. James, how you doing?
Good, thanks, Woody. Good to be back for 2025 and Happy New Year and all that for everyone listening. It's good
Yeah,
to be back.
and there's lots going on. Now, you've written your piece today has been about how resource security is becoming a pretty critical focus for the major powers with some surprising developments, potentially ahead in the Arctic region. Now, what really caught my attention was how you connect historical resource acquisitions like Alaska to current geopolitical moves and what this might mean for commodity markets. So let's dive in. You've highlight how competition for resources might reshape the markets in 2025, particularly through the Greenland situation. Can you just sort of bring us up to date on that?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting. Just the last couple of weeks, if listeners haven't heard about Trump's big announcement that he's interested in Greenland, so bringing back or bringing in Greenland into some sort of American power. I've called it the 51st state of America. Um, who knows what sort of agreement he has in mind, but at the moment, it's an interesting development because I think Greenland is part of the Kingdom of Denmark. It's an autonomous territory, um, but Trump is essentially trying to lay claim to this region. And there's different reasons on why people might think that's the case. But from a resource perspective, I think there's a clear indication or clear strategic position here for America. Just the fact that Greenland um, is potentially extremely resource rich, um, because it hasn't had a lot of exploration or mining in the past. We don't exactly know what extent that is in terms of what minerals, but the Denmark Geological Survey has actually done some early work over that region and has identified things like copper, nickel,
Right.
zinc, lead. So it is potentially extremely resource rich. And I think this sort of lies at the heart of perhaps what Trump has in mind in his sort of big Greenland sort of announcement over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. How would that work? Like, I mean, is that something Denmark would want to give up?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, Trump has. It's whether this is sort of more Trump bluster. I mean, I guess that's something to consider as well. I think Trump has considered the idea of perhaps purchasing Greenland. I think he's mentioned that the people in Greenland, the MAGA Trump is big there, and that they may support the sort of unification somehow of joining into America. I don't know those sort of that sort of side or what's happening in Trump's head. All I know is that Greenland is a resource rich nation, and I think that's probably going to be the key reason why America is sort of making this, or Trump especially is making this sort of power push into this what is a new
Yeah.
frontier for mineral exploration.
So beyond the obvious resource potential, how do you see this sort of North Arctic frontier changing the dynamics of the global commodity markets, particularly in relation to China's current dominance?
Yeah, well, that's right. So China is dominates a lot of refined critical minerals, and one aspect of that is the battery supply chain. So everything from lithium refining to the cathode materials, the anode materials, the battery cells. So China dominates the supply of those raw materials, so up to sort of 80-90%. Um, so that really limits America's ability sort of to bring in these tariffs and trade barriers, because China can obviously just fire back with restricting export of critical minerals. So if America's thinking long term, it needs to think about securing its own mineral supply chain, which exists outside of China. So, and I think that is one of the key reasons that lies at the heart of why Trump is looking at places like Greenland, new mineral frontiers.
Hmm.
Um, Obviously, that's not going to come quickly. So exploration mining, this is a long-term game. It's 10, 15 years before you actually see supply come on board. But I think that's what America and the West needs to do, because it's ignored investment in key mineral deposits over the last couple of decades, whereas China has really built its position, it's strengthened its position in all these commodities. So
Yeah.
um, I think it's a pretty important point, and I think this whole Greenland, while it looks pretty outlandish in the news, I think it's for resource investors especially. I think it's a clear sign of where things are going on the geopolitical front and for resources broadly.
Yeah. Yeah, you do mention in your piece that commodities have been taken for granted in the West for years, and it's led to historic lows in exploration and development. What key indicators are you watching that might signal the start of this catch-up phase in resource investment?
Yeah, so we've covered it briefly in the past. So one of the key metrics I use is capex, so investment in new mining developments and exploration. So that just gives you a gauge on where we're sitting in terms of the investment cycle in mining. So um, if it's declining, that probably tells you that we're sort of on the other side of a commodity boom. But if it's gradually rising, we're probably on the upward leg, and that's where we are today. So it made a major bottom investment in mining, made a major bottom in 2016, and since then it's gradually been picking up. And I think we'll see a big lift, especially with sort of big geopolitical events which are centering around commodities, like the Greenland topic. I
Yeah.
think these types of things will really shift focus and investment back into mining, and build capex and really sort of set us up for the next sort of bullish phase.
Yeah, right. Just final question, really. You touch on how the changing climate is actually making some resource deposits more accessible. Um, how do you see that affecting investment opportunities in the resource sector, particularly in inaccessible regions?
Yeah, well, it's interesting if you look at Canada. So the
Yeah.
nations which have these sort of Arctic frontiers and have seen obviously the glacial melting and which has made these areas more accessible for exploration. I mean, if you're an environmentalist, that's probably a disaster. But for geologists, for resources, for countries looking to tap into new resources, it's actually opening up new opportunities.
Mm.
So for Canada, in the Yukon province, which is way up north, sort of borders Alaska, this has been a major hub for a lot of new discoveries in Canada. Um, and this is where a lot of the big discoveries have been made in the last 5 years. So I think we'll see a similar thing happen in other sort of northern frontiers. Russia, Putin has talked about Siberian, so big, vast area, the big Siberian peninsula, which is potentially hosting a lot more minerals with sort of ice receding. Those areas will also become more accessible.
Mm.
And then, of course, Greenland, which is perhaps America's play into this sort of opening up of new frontiers for mineral exploration.
Yeah, right. Fascinating. All right, we'll leave it at there. If you'd like to read James's article, as always, click the link below. It will take you directly to the page on our website. It's completely free to read. Let us know what you think. Thank you, James.
No worries.
The only
Thanks,
thing I will
Woody.
say is we've got an exciting development happening, which we'll announce probably later in the week, where we can delve into more sort of the what you're sort of discovering on your research to bring readers along the way. But we'll talk about more next week, hopefully.